Welcome, everyone, to PureEsperanza's Weaving Stories of Your Well-Being. This is a series put on by Pure Esperanza, and you can see us monthly with some different topics. In case you're not familiar with Pure Esperanza, we are a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing forth consciousness while educating body, mind, and soul in the art of well-being. Tonight's topic is eating for your body, mind, and soul. And we are just so happy to be co-hosting this series with our esteemed guest, Balaka Ghoshal. And Balaka, you're here today. Thank you so much for being here today. She is a writer, a storyteller, and also an eco-friendly and environmental advocate, copywriter by day. She's bringing her unique gifts with us today and also sharing her life passion of all this rich storytelling that she has. So we are so pleased to have this opportunity to experience this with Balaka. Thank you.
My great pleasure.
So tonight's topic, which we're really excited about, is an ever controversial, and it's really, I think, provoking for a lot of people, and a topic of popular interest, which is food. And why? Because we all eat. And so tonight we want to be sharing some different stories and some discussion about food, but more about the what we eat, how we eat, why and when. And those are some of the other topics around food that are very much a part of how we nourish our body, mind, and soul. And one simple way to think about it is that, we're eating in a physical way to sustain us, but then it also sustains us emotionally and mentally and even spiritually. And this morning, I had an experience that I wanted to share to start us off tonight, and that was simply that I was soaking some oats the night before in preparation for a little breakfast today. Now, I shared this on Meaningful Moments, which is another series that Pure Esperanza hosts. And it was a meaningful moment for me because it was significant that my husband and I have just had a move recently, and we were able to sit down at the table because we have extra time with my husband being closer to his work now, and we can have a little breakfast now in the morning together. So I soaked these oats. We sat down, we had a little breakfast. It was a nice conversation, a little bit more of a start of a day and easing into the day. And when my husband got up and got ready to go to work, he said, "My tummy feels happy." And it was so delightful to hear that because it really was that experience, not just on the physical level of the nourishment, but also that emotional aspect of the bonding and the connection, and also the sustaining for all the mental activity that both him and I do during the day. So it was a really beautiful way that it was a well-rounded, a holistic experience of eating. And Balaka, I know that you have a story about just that, that it's more of a process of an experience of eating, not just what we taste and what we take into our body, but how it sustains us and supports our other functions in our bodies and our other ways that our body is nourished.
Right. And it's so good that Stephen got to enjoy a breakfast, something that he thought he was fine without, right? And now he kind of relished it. And I like the statement when he said, "My stomach feels happy." And there's a funny story. There are actually many stories from India about food and from the whole world, actually, but many that I know. But the one that pops into my mind right now is as the stomach keeps enjoying the food and lets out a burp when it's very full, and the tongue thinks, "Ah, that was so lovely." That kind of made the brain jealous once, and it's like, that's not cool because I get to do all the meal planning and what to eat next and what to eat next and what to do. And the food comes all the way close, but it gets into the mouth and then shoved down into the stomach. That's not fair. And then the legs said, think about me. My situation is worse because I get to do all the legwork of going to the grocery store and then standing in the kitchen, or if someone has a kitchen garden, I'm working in the garden. And I don't even get to see what got ready. Like it's on the other side of the plate and then inside the stomach. And the hand said, think about me. I mean, we fingers are so busy cooking, cutting, cleaning, and stirring, and then serving, and then taking the morsel all the way up to the mouth. And that's it. I don't get the taste of it. And they're all looking at the mouth and the whole digestive system like you guys are enslaved us. And the lips say, well, no, everything just walks past me. I don't get to keep anything. All I do is smack, the lip licking. And well, the teeth say, well, we are only chewing the food. We don't get to keep anything except for those little bits that give us pain later on. And they're all looking at the tongue like you know. And the tongue said, well, I'm only 3 inches long, guys. I mean, have mercy on me. I'm the littlest of you all. I enjoy it, but I don't get to keep anything. I just have to mix it with saliva and shove it down. And the esophagus will said, well, guys, I'm just a pipe, honestly. I just keep getting stuff from up there, and I'm just squeezing and pushing it down. And the stomach was the wisest of all. I said, hey, don't you all understand? I'm doing this for your good. We are a team. We're working together to keep everyone happy. And I said, don't try to sell that benevolence idea to us. You get to enjoy it. You burp all the time and we only work hard. And then the stomach looked at the intestine and said, well, the small intestine gets to keep it the longest. And the small intestine said, oh my goodness, yes, I keep it the longest, but you know what I do? I'm like a bunch of noodles, stuffed in that little space. And there are so many wiggly corners. I meander through so many hairpin bends, and there's traffic jam everywhere. The old stuff that I have to push. And I have to make sure that all the organs are getting the nutrition. So much work, even when you're sleeping, I'm working. Do you know that? And oh no. And then the large intestine knew that it was all coming towards him. And he said, don't be jealous of me, please, because I do the worst job and all for your good. I make poop. Please don't have mercy on me. I do that dirty job to keep you all happy. And my job is only to take it from that point of receiving all the way out to the other end of the tunnel. That's all I do. No one believed them. The head said, you know what? We are on strike. I'm not going to think about food anymore. I'd rather watch TV or do something else. And the leg said, oh yes, I'm right by the couch. Here I am. And the butt said, I'm with you, honey. And then the hand said, well, I've got my remote and the game console. I'm happy. I'm not cooking anymore. So that went on, and the tongue was kind of sad, like, hey, I'm going dry, and the stomach at times said hello, but no response. And then after a few hours, the head started feeling a little dizzy. I said, oh, I think I need to lie down, but even lying down didn't help. The legs said, oh, I'm so tired. I don't know what's happening. And the tongue said, I need to retire early. And then the hand said, oh my goodness, I have no energy to do even that game console. I can't hold it and do anything with my toggle buttons. Then eventually, very slowly, when the stomach again spoke to them, hello, I'm trying to help, get me some food. Anything will work. So slowly, the food started coming laboriously in the beginning, and then the stomach started working on it and said, do you see now what I mean? That we are a team. Until you help, I can't help you. And said, okay, we get it now. Let's get busy in the kitchen again. So when Stephen said, my stomach feels happy, I could instantly, visualize that story, that his wellness in the belly was actually giving him emotional, that little high feeling. And the work productivity gets better. And, then you, as you go through life in different stages, we like different food, but we sometimes worry so much about how much we're eating and what we are eating, which supplements, how much calcium, magnesium, oh, that food has this element. And then we keep thinking about input, input, input. So this was the input story, that, yeah, we are as a team, the whole body parts are working to keep each other healthy, the whole system. But there is an output issue, right? That the large intestine's job, no matter how good it does it, there needs to be complete shoving of the stuff all the way from here to all the way to the end. And there is a very funny story on the output. My uncle was a medical doctor. He used to say that the command in the Navy, and he was in the, he was in the Air Force, but he used to use this Navy command that if you want to win the war, keep the deck clear, because if the deck is cluttered, suddenly, then the fighter jets cannot fly off. They need the deck as the runway. And if there's a, with the lulling and pitching of the ship, if there's even a bucket rolling over, the plane can have an accident. So it's if you want to win the war, keep the deck clear. And he would kind of show his tummy, and he was a fit man, like even in his 50s. So to keep the deck clear also means keep the whole tunnel, like there should not be any traffic buildup in a tunnel, right? For that, once, let me tell you that there was a few hundred years ago, a village doctor in a very tiny village with simple folks, simple, happy folks. And this doctor, who was skilled in the Ayurvedic medicine, Ayurveda is the ancient Indian wisdom. He wanted his son to learn his skills, but his son was not interested. The son was about 40. I mean, all his life he tried. And you can't go anywhere else back in those days. Your training school, your college, universities, all at home, because Royal Bengal tigers, even if they're not everywhere, they could meet you sometimes and snack on you. So if you want to stay safe and become a professional, the easiest, safest was to learn from your forefathers and family people. So here, this man was not interested. But as he aged, the father, he wanted to pass on a wisdom, because the village needed a doctor. How could they do without any medical help? So at his deathbed, he called his son, the son, here is this. And he showed the triphala. There's an item called haritaki as one of the components of the 3 herbs, which is basically a purgative, flushes and cleans the gut. So he said, at least let me teach you this. He said, anyone who comes to you for any ailment, make pills out of these herbs powdered up and give it to them. And the son thought, all these years my dad wondered how to teach this to my son, and that's it? Like, this is what my dad's been doing? He said, Father, is that all? He said, yes, because he knew that there is nothing else he can teach him. He said, yes, just do that. No matter what they come to you for, give them these pills. Well, after his father passed away, he did that, and it worked. When someone came with a headache, well, these pills did help some. With arthritis, an old man came, had those, it helped some. So people were happy. And then one day, there was a forest by the village and another big village on the other side with many strong people who wanted to bully all the small villages around. They wanted to kind of own the property, extend their village. So they had an eye on this forest. And they thought, the small villagers, the people from small village comes into this and gets the firewood and some fruits. That's not fair. let's call the chief. They called the chief and said, hey, you know what? That is not going to go on forever. But the chief said, that's what we have been doing. We have been sharing this forest forever. Why do you want to change? They said, no, no longer. Let's have a fight tomorrow. If you want to claim this forest, let's have a fight. If you win, you get to have, complete control on the forest. But otherwise, we take control. That seemed so unfair. And he knew that my village has about, at most 15 men, young and old, to do this fight. I thought, oh, what do I do? But agreeing to this unreasonable demand is also not fair. So he said, all right, we will have a fight tomorrow. And he returned to his village to meet his men and share with them. It was almost like a tragedy. Oh my goodness. I mean, we know those people, they're so big and powerful. We are no match. They're going to just, mash us up. They said, well, we got to try. We got to find some way to become strong enough or do something, but we have to fight. This is a battle of justice. And so one of them said, hey, can we get stronger with some medicine? Let's go to the doctor. So they went to the doctor and told him the predicament. And this doctor, the son, who only gives that one kind of pill, he said, should I tell them that, hey, all I know is this, don't bother me, I cannot help you. But that time, just at that moment, he remembered his father's last words. No matter what they come to you for, you give them this pill. So he said, oh, yes, if you wait for a half hour, I will work out something for you to make you strong. And they waited outside like, yeah, strong pill, we will do it. And what did the son do? This is doctor. He made bigger pills and he made 2 of them for each one of them. He hollered, how many are going to fight? He said, about 15. I said, okay. He made 30 pills, handed them. Have 1 now and have 1 at bedtime. And then he left, oh my goodness, I don't know what's going to happen, but I did my job. And these simple villagers had it just the way the doctor had advised. And they pitched their tent by a field for the battle next day at around 10 in the morning. And at the other side of the field, the stronger village had pitched their tents, about 20 of them. We'll see them tomorrow. Now, by morning, the chief still thought that we need to spy and see, just to strategize how to make mashed potatoes out of them. Let me send 2 spies to see how many there are. Go get a head count. When they come out of the tent in the morning for their morning job behind the bushes, you get a head count, okay? So that's, oh, no big deal. They hid behind trees, which are quite far away, but they can still see the people in the mist. And I'm just going to kind of, I made a turban out of my little dupatta, the veil, just to give my little elementary student kids used to love it. So these villagers are coming out in the morning with a stick in hand, like, let's say this is the stick they're going to fight with, the stick in hand, and they have a little, bowl of water, no toilet paper back in those days. And we're talking about hundreds of years ago, right? They were going out and these spies are counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and people went back to the tent and more people came out and more people came out and they kept counting. He said, hey, how do so many people stay inside one tent? I mean, that's a tiny tent and there are too many people. But guess what's happening inside the tent? It's the same people going in and out, right? They're going back, and since it's a purgative, they're going, oh boy, it looks like I need to go again. And they're going out again and out again. And the chief is worried that, hey, if you keep going to the bathroom, How will you fight? Remember, we had this fight coming up. I said, yeah, but we can't help it. We got to go. And the chief also said, yeah, I can't really blame them because even I think I need to go. And so they kept going and kept going. And these people kept track till about 80. And then they said, hey, we need to go and tell the chief. So they went and rushed to the chief, fell on his knees and said, we need to stop this battle because they have found many people, maybe from neighboring villages. We counted up to 80 and there were still people coming out. Maybe they're all squatting and sleeping through the night. We don't know. I said, are you sure? He said, yes, we counted. We just kept counting. They will mash us up. We'll be pulverized, really. And then the chief got very worried. That, oh yeah, well, let's send a messenger to them and let's make peace. Let things be just the way they were and let's not mess with them. Let's share the forest with them. We don't mind. And so the messenger came and, whatever little gift that the processes gave the gift and said, we know you are very strong as a team, very strong people, and we want to make peace and we propose harmony and living together, sharing the forest. And the chief loved that, but he's thinking, how did that happen? I mean, how do they know we are strong? And well, he didn't show it. He just said, oh, I accept the proposal of peace. Thank you so much. And later on, they just rejoiced, went back to the village. And how did this happen? Was we don't know, but it's so good. And then someone thought, you know what? The pills. It must have made us so strong that we exuded such a vibration. It went ahead and, with the breeze and told them something. I thought, well, it could be magical. Let's go to the doctor. So they took the doctor and danced around with him, did that happy thing, victory dance around the village, invincible, and peace prevailed. So you see, the output, if the gut cleaning can not only give them that happy dance and make them invincible, at least psychologically, it actually took care of other problems, right? So often the gut, when our whole eating system, how we eat, what we eat, how we invite the food, and then how we say thank you and let the rest go out, takes care of a lot of problems in our life, diseases, mental upliftment. So on a fun note, I say, when the motion is good, the emotions are also pretty good. so that's kind of, this is the truth that the villagers never figured out, right? But we as the listeners know that both ends of the story. And we can kind of apply it to our lives. That how do we invite the food in? And how do we, with gratefulness, let it go out?
Yeah.
So I hope you all liked the story. It's from my childhood.
Yeah. Lovely, lovely, Balaka. It's so true. And I think that that's a key component. And another part, because right now we were focusing more on the what we eat, the input, the output. And then if we backtrack a little bit, we can think about the how part, because the how part is a really important piece to that inviting the food in and the consciousness that we create to nourish ourselves. So I wanted to share with us a little bit about this how part and that preparation that we do when we start to make our food, by baking it, cooking it, even setting the table, and how we create the atmosphere, the space to invite the food in. So, there have actually been stories, many stories, and even some beautiful films on that bit about how we make our food, cook our food, prepare our food. If we're feeling stressed, we have negative emotions, there's a lot of stories around how that goes energetically into the food. So we really don't want to prepare food in those states of our feelings and emotions. We want to really bring those additional benefits of the positive kinds of energy and what we can do with that as well. So when we're doing that cooking and we're, releasing those kinds of emotions that are emitting and exuding love, perhaps with thoughts of the loved ones we're preparing it for, who we're serving, how it's going to nourish us and them, how we're going to create an experience together around this nourishing element that sustains our body.
And the loving, mindfulness into the
Yeah.
process of cooking.
Absolutely, is all a very important piece. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about that and how we begin to prepare our food in our space. So we can, backtrack that even some more to how we select our food, how we go to the store to purchase our food, or who we get our food from, where it's sourced from, how we bring it into our home, the cleaning of our food, the setting of our table, so even think about those special things that we might omit when we're in a hurry. Perhaps instead of a paper towel or a napkin, we use cloth napkins. We use our dinnerware, our silverware that is special to us or has some significance or some meaning to us. We choose the colors. We can create the ambience with the setting, the lighting, perhaps a candle at the table or flowers, even music in the background, what absolutely helps our digestion as well. And so these are things that we can begin to do.
Right. And don't you think, Esperanza, and everyone else, as we will be soon sharing your stories, that sometimes as we are aging or when we are ill temporarily and doctor says you can't eat that anymore for a few days, it's such a challenge to suddenly take it out. But once we cook and once we eat with those things, those elements that you mentioned, with good music and a good setting, with a good mindset, maybe even that unpalatableness or the challenge of giving up a food for a while or even for life, if I have to give up something, I can accept it when it's not coming as a on-the-go food, but more as in that context, right? Like I had to give up wheat and milk. It's still a challenge for me, but I know I have to do it. But, I'm in this beautiful setting that you talked about, the how is going to help me. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So what I was getting to also is just these parts of when we're creating that ambience and the conversation that we'll have around the table that allows us to sit at the table longer to digest the food, the time, the experience that we'll create with those loved ones that we're sharing a meal with, or even if we have just a setting for ourselves, whatever place we are in life, this act of self-care or self-love for ourselves and that experience that we have with food and the nourishment it gives us. So what we do, how we do that in terms of preparing to sit down and have that meal is one aspect. Another one is perhaps just a simple blessing. So many of us already have that practice, whether it's through our spiritual beliefs or our religious beliefs or just a time of reverence. When I was a Waldorf educator in Waldorf schools and sat down with our students to prepare a snack, we would sit down at the table, and these children came from many different households, different ways of sitting down at the table, different beliefs, and still it was a moment of unification when we sat down. And it was not an indoctrination to any type of dogma or spiritual practice specifically. It was really a moment of reverence, just a thankfulness to be able to sit down and have that snack together, prepared together, shared, and now having that moment where we might have a verse or a song that we would sing. And often it had that element of reciprocity, how it was being returned from where we perceived it coming to us from, the life that it brought to us, and our acknowledgement of that life and how it sustained us in our thankfulness going back to that life source. So for instance, this morning, as I had shared with you that little oatmeal experience that we had this morning in my home, we might hold that idea of that bowl of oatmeal and then perceiving those grains, the oats that it came from, the sun shining upon them as it grew, the roots that were going deep into the earth, receiving its nourishment to grow, the rain falling upon it, which helped it to grow, the wind blowing through it. Now we have all the elements and all the effects of the earth and the elements that were at work through the oats, and now here at our table, through the harvest and everything now arriving at our table, even through the hands that they went through to arrive at our table. And now we can give that kind of thanks, not just in a general way, but in a way that really embraces the fullness of that reciprocity, life for life, that life sustenance. And we can think of our blessing also in terms of, how it nourishes not just us, but our loved ones, be they with us at the table or not at the table, or others that are hungry in many different ways, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And we can think of that collective consciousness as all connected together, and our blessing at that moment going out to everything and everyone.
Right, and the energy that we receive can again pass it forward to touch, other lives.
And now we have a whole expanded version of what that blessing could be for us. And then I thought of another piece of sitting at the table, and now we're at the meal and we're enjoying the meal, and the chewing, the masticating of our food. And it reminds me of when I was a child and sitting with my father, who would always tell us, chew your food 100 times. And I remember thinking at that time, oh, come on, Papi, chewing my food all that time, and couldn't even get to like past 50, right? And sometimes I would just challenge myself to see. But now that I'm older, that chewing of my food is a really important part of how I digest my food really properly, and how I get more nourishment out of it as it activates the salivation glands, as it releases different chemicals in my body, as it connects my gut brain to my brain and allows me to actually receive fuller nourishment from what I'm eating. And so now I really do probably chew close to 100 times now when I'm eating my food, and it's wonderful to do that. And all those little things that we pick up along the way that allow us to really have a fuller experience of just what a privilege it is to eat and share in this experience for body, mind, and soul.
Right.
So enjoying that experience to the fullest is a really important piece. And that next brings us to the why and the when as we move through different cycles of life and we balance that. And Balaka, you might have some more to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take much time on that. It's just that, and because of the restriction food, I don't want to call it restriction, but the changes that my life is going through. I have a constriction at the throat here, for which I have to give up a few foods. And on that list, my last challenge is the wheat and milk. And I see many others struggling with those prohibitions that they have, especially if there's a child in the family who has to kind of say no to a food. And it's so hard for the child and for the family. How can we make it not stressful by eating it right in front, but at the same time holding back everyone and make the child help along emotionally to go through that phase of still enjoying food, the food that is available, the food that can be, creatively presented or taken in. We can keep working on that, and not to be too hard on yourself, even when, like sometimes I was like, as a young person, that I have to reduce 5 pounds by that date, and I'm really struggling and almost forcing myself to not eat and things like that, obsession or the muscle building, whatever it is. We have to be kind. If I have an ailment and if there is a little window of time, I can say, okay, on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and family birthdays, I'm going to indulge. So the brain says, okay, I'm just staving it off for later. It's not robbed away from me forever. That assurance that I'm like, it's there for me, but I'm just thinking about it and pushing it, or just mind eating. I sometimes have a big bowl of ice cream in my mind. I'm just relishing every bit of it, my tongue, teeth, and but I didn't add any calorie. I call it seafood, you know. And being a vegetarian, people just wonder, like, what? She lives on seafood? She said. I thought she was a vegetarian. I thought, well, seafood, you know. I see with my eyes, and I close my eyes, and then relish it all the way, and still try to stay with my diet that is needed, and still respecting my body instead of questioning it. Why did this happen to me? So I think, you know, many of you here would want to have some of, you know, your little personal challenges and how you kind of took a step or how in welcoming the food within those guidelines and still having a good experience out of it. Or if anything from here you would like to take, anything that you want to share. And since you're muted, Esperanza, tell me, how is there any way that they can
Yeah.
um,
So if you go to the
story?
if you go to the participants, you can go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand in the reactions if there's more people than one to share stories. And while we're doing that and getting ready, you could also put it in the chat box. You can ask questions there or put them into the chat box. And, you know, I think that that was an important piece that you brought up, Palaka, as far as, you know, we respecting our body, being able to hear the differences and changes, because sometimes I think we do, you know, especially now in this day and age where there's so much information coming to us, and we've had this conversation, you know, you'll see one article or hear one person speaking as an expert at that, like what you should not have, and then you'll turn around and see someone else or another article saying that you should absolutely have.
Absolutely have that. But the one thing, you know.
And so many people just kind of throw up their hands and, like, you know, or diets, it's this, it's that, it's, you know. And I think that the true art of this whole eating for your body, mind, and soul is, of course, you gather information and knowledge and you begin to apply it and see how it works for you. But that honing into that inner voice of yourself, listening, you can connect with your gut and ask it, like, what is it that you're telling me? What are you needing? And I know that for some people they think that that's funny, but there's a lot more science that's coming out about, like, how you actually talk to your body and talk to the cells of your body and listen to what it's telling you. And it's so important because, like, in my own life, I know that I was a vegetarian for 10 years, and during that time I was raw food and vegan at times. And then I had a 10-year span between my first three and my fourth child. And out of nowhere, this thought came to me, which was I had to have salmon. And this is right before I actually knew that I had already conceived my fourth child. And I was in that, like, little bit of limbo space thinking, like, okay, well, we were going to conceive, but I wasn't sure that I really was. And I was in that wait period. But that salivation for salmon when I had been a vegetarian for 10 years was like, where is this coming from? But lo and behold, it was, and my body was different than it was 10 years earlier with my last child. And that was a change that I made. And now here I am 16 years later, and I'm needing to move more towards a vegetarian diet again, still eating some protein, but not relying that as heavily. And I'm just listening to what it's doing, not because I'm being told or because it says I should do this or that, but just really being clear. As well as I know, like, lactose intolerance seems to be increasing a little bit more. So I have to keep those little special moments for myself and then, you know, move more away from that and do other things and just honoring that. And that's what I think the beauty is of what a gift it is to have this, you know, body and connect it with mind and soul too. So I'm looking here to see if there are others.
Yeah, like come with your stories. If you don't want to, that's totally okay. You don't have to. But if you tell us something about your life and or a story that you want to share, it's absolutely welcome. So Fred, I can see Fred and Pam, Shalini. Oh, so
Yeah.
beautiful to see you all here.
And I think earlier someone had mentioned too that they wanted to, was it,
My husband is here too.
yeah, was it someone earlier, Ruma had mentioned if she could talk or,
Yeah, do
yeah.
you want to go
So,
ahead? And what about Shalini? Do you want, she's an environmental specialist, and
yeah,
there's Pam. Pam is a health expert.
yeah.
So she knows a lot about.
So this is Ruma.
Hi, Ruma.
Hi. Just wanted to know the connection between sleep and food. So if you could talk something about that. How many hours of sleep? So is there any connection between that, the soul?
I would love to share a little bit, and I'd like for you to as well, Balaka. So for myself personally, I think that there have been different times in my life where I've definitely needed more sleep, and there have been times when there have been different processes going on. Perhaps there was different work I was doing. Usually it also is tied in with like a different spiritual work that I'm doing that might have a lot of energy and might not need as much sleep. But I do know that there was a time in my younger days where I could eat later at night, and now in general I know that that's like an Ayurvedic principle that sundown, that's when everything slows down, and but I was able to do that without it having its effects. Now at this time in my life, I know that I don't usually eat later at night. It's better for me to not do that because I feel more rested. My gut has a rest. It's already starting its process as I go into sleep. It helps me sleep better. It helps me sleep deeper if I don't have it loaded. So, after 8 o'clock or so, I don't ever have anything. Usually my dinner time is done well hours before that, but I just know that that's what happens for me. But again, I would always advocate that you begin to really listen to what your body is doing, and because you're having a unique experience, as well as all those kinds of things about our lifestyle and what our circumstances are individually, if we have children, if we don't have children, just our work during the day, how much activity we have going on in our brain. Those could all be affecting us and our sleep and all those kinds of things. So all those pieces, because we're not just segregated little pieces of a human being. We are multidimensional, having all these different parts of ourself that we're integrating all the time. That's what a holistic.
Right, it's so complex and so subtle, right? Yeah, my only connection, again, on a funny note, from my first story, the input story, how the small intestine complained that, I get to work when you guys are sleeping. So that's ideally not to happen. Best is if the whole body, if the intestine also says, okay, most of my job is done. This person has eaten, and it's like closing the workshop for that day and then resting. In the morning you get some flush of warm water. It's like washed and clean and ready to start again. But if you are on night duty, when everyone else goes to sleep and I'm here trying to keep the workshop going on, there is a lot of grumbling, and we hear the tummy rumbling and belching, burping, or waking up with a acid reflux, and all those things happen. So that's the connection. I would say the quality of sleep, if you have eaten wrong food at night, lots of samosas, and that might say, hey, I need help all through the night, like SOS in a Morse code, fiery signals coming up the throat. that might disturb the sleep. But otherwise, number of hours, to me, number of hours really doesn't matter. For me is how intensely did you sleep.
Yeah.
But I think that when I've eaten the right kind of food with the right discipline, it actually allows me to sleep well in deep sleep. But that's a very good question, because they seem like two different departments, but it's one subtle, complex combination of biology. And everybody's different, like the fingerprints, but still that pattern, I think, is,
One thing that I found that is really helpful as well for me is, let's say I have decided to indulge and I go out and I have a slice of pizza, and it has cheese on it or whatever, and there's a combination of peppers and olives or something like that. I might decide to have a little bit of some herbal tea and maybe a peppermint tea to help my tummy, and to bring it down, because there's something that happens there with some different herbs that I can take, or even some homeopathy that I might enjoy taking a little bit of, so that it just helps to make sure that it doesn't cause too much havoc in my system. And water, I mean, what can we say about water except drink lots of water, and I don't mean like, drink your 8 gallons a day and all that kind of stuff. I just mean like, keep yourself,
to keep you hydrated.
Keep you hydrated, keep the system moving, flowing in that kind of way. And then there are things we can do for clarity, that would help us as well. And how to stimulate the NRF2 factors and things like that too, that really help to help the brain fog, and I would absolutely say that while I have indulged, probably most of us have, with delicious sweet treats at times, I know that cutting back on sugar for me, anytime I've done it in my life, and now it's a discipline again, has been helpful for me. Definitely.
Absolutely. It's hard on the mind initially, but then once we start seeing the benefit, we get the energy and the bounce on our feet.
Yeah, and the sugar with the emotion is real strong. It definitely, I think, helps to keep you a little bit more grounded. I think it definitely contributes to being more emotional. So if we're experiencing stressful situations, adding additional sugar and caffeine and things like that, that kind of tends to send it out the way that's not going to help us, not going to serve us in the best way, And
I've seen in animals how eating is like a worship. They almost like focus, and they put so much of their energy towards food. For them, it's like they live to eat kind of a thing. All day long, they're thinking of food alone. And because we have food so easily available to us, we keep indulging. That's why they say, if you had to run behind a jungle fowl and then hunt it and eat it, you would have the exercise and the calorie burnt and all that stuff. But we don't do that, right? It's so easily available. So if you read the book, I'll put the book name here. It's called Hatchet. It's a children's book, but it shows how a child had to stay in the forest for several months, or Robinson Crusoe, who had to fend for everything for himself. They were constantly focused on food with respect and with intensity, and not the casual eating. My grandfather used to say, just the Hamletian dilemma, to eat or not to eat. If that's what you're thinking, the answer should always be do not eat. Because when you're having the dilemma, means it's your greed, telling you, go eat it. Nothing's going to happen. Take it in your mouth. It's yummy. One won't hurt. But it's actually not the nourishing food. Ask yourself, can I have an apple? If it's not an apple, I'm not that hungry. Well, then you are not hungry.
Yes.
So those little guidelines of whether you really needed to eat or not, respecting eat, and even mammal pets, if you see dogs and cats eat, they eat with so much of focus into the job that they're doing. They don't want to be disturbed. If you try to pet them, then Fred, I think, is an expert on pets. There's so many, like furry family. So they kind of want to eat in peace, So that kind of engagement, if we have in the food and we introduce our little disciplines, I think we will be quite energized to look at life in the right
Yes.
way.
Yeah. I like the fact that you brought up the respect issue, because I think that, there's a consciousness just even about the sourcing of the food. We talked about that a little bit on the reciprocity bit, but I think that, for many of us, we go to the grocery store and we, purchase something there. But especially when we're looking at, the animal type of proteins and things like that, energetically, there's so much that happens now with the way that that has just become an industry, and the way it's mass produced. And so many inhumane practices, whether you're choosing to eat protein or not, or you're vegetarian or whatever it is. I think that there is, just the idea that, if an animal is experiencing fear and, a way of being kept that is like torture for them, and they pass that way, that's in their flesh. It's, the chemical release that's in the body, and then, it becomes a piece of meat that we eat later on. And this isn't like a righteous kind of thing that I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to state that, energetically for all of us, we need to spend some time thinking about that sourcing and what we're putting into our body, taking in that way.
And in respect, with that respect, and I just wanted to add a quick, it's not a story really, it's just that when human beings started agriculture, they were mass producing things as much as we need. We don't have to dig around in the jungle to find a sudden, root and rejoice. No, I mean, I can grow as many potatoes I want, or peas, it's my choice. And then the food, all those veggies, so that, we're getting eaten up by the tons, and people are getting fat, and then they're going to the gym, and then they're eating it again. So it's the funny story is that they went to God and said, "Oh, please protect us. The humans are eating us all up." And God said, "Yeah, I saw that, yeah. So look, what do we do? Please do something for us." And I said, "Well, if they eat too much of you, you eat them from inside. You go in and then you do your little thing from inside, and then they get sick." So I said, "Oh, okay." They found out, okay, we have a way to venge for it. It's a funny story, but the bottom line is this, that when we eat too much and without that mindfulness, without the respect, they do things from inside which doesn't give us a lot of happiness.
Yeah.
Other problems. So respect, no matter what, whether it's vegetarian or whatever you choose, it's your thing, but whatever you have on your plate, and you don't have to have a spiritual, like God, pray, if you whatever, I mean, in your kind of way, that gratefulness that so many elements in this world have arrived on my plate in front of me to eat and sustain myself. That is such a good feeling. Just thankful for everything, So Thanksgiving is not just on that day on November. I kind of want to do a Thanksgiving in my heart every day, and that helps a little bit. And then it doesn't matter how much you ate, but how nicely you took it in.
Yes.
Instead of 27
I was just going to say, I like the story that Malaka told about giving voice to each of the elements of your body as the food passed through. On a personal experience, I have two voices. One is the child is the mouth, and that's the one that takes in, and what I've realized over the years as I've aged a bit is that the intestines, the stomach, the intestines, and the big intestines have the adult voice that says, you got to stop putting all those things in the front end. But it's just the child-adult kind of relationship between those different parts of the body.
Awesome. So Fred, as Lasang was saying, I'm the littlest one. Why are you mad at me? It's like the tongue is
Thank you. Well, and I think
thank you, Fred.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fred. And I think we talked about it before, Malaka, as far as the too much of even a good thing isn't necessarily good for you, So it's just that moderation, that honing in and listening. And I had also put in the chat box, Return to the Table. It's another woman in the PureEsperanza community. She has a whole movement. It's called Return to the Table. And it's just fabulous. She really has, raised her family around eating at the table. She's an Italian woman married to a Parisian, and so much of their culture really embraces the idea of sitting at the table together. And, a 2-hour meal is not unusual. That is part of their activity and what they do, in the evening. But it's beautiful. There's so many tips, so many insights on just how to have this experience where you're creating a soulful, nourishing type of experience, not based on any spiritual belief or indoctrination or religion. It's just about just that real, deep, thankful reverence towards sitting down and having a meal together, and that celebration of life itself, So I put that into the chat box. You can look for this on social media.
Yeah, it reminds me of the story Stone Soup, I don't remember the author, but Stone Soup is
story.
Like out of nothing, how the three soldiers, beautiful village.
Yeah, and the whole village comes together.
Amazing story.
We're getting close to the end of our time. I didn't know if anybody else had any questions, but both Balaka and I have, emails you can reach us at, contact us, and you can certainly get a hold of us if there's any other questions or any other things you want to talk about in specific or know about as far as the topic we had tonight. Balaka, did you want to share any more about where they can contact you or reach you specifically?
Yeah, well, my website is thegreenwriter.com, and I think everyone here kind of knows that. Yeah, thegreenwriter.com, and I have a couple of free things out there. One is LinkedIn, simple LinkedIn hacks, and if you want to add something green into your life. So those are the things you can just try out and see.
And you can find, thank you so much. And you can find us, PureEsperanza, on our website at pureesperanza.org. We also have a YouTube channel. You can find this recording on there, as well as the series of Meaningful Moments, 365 Days. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and there are all different types of content on there for holistic living and really empowering consciousness, your journey and well-being itself. So Balaka sits on our board as well, and we have a beautiful board working together to be bringing more of this type of event and webinars and virtual experience during this time, especially when I think so many people are open to this journey of well-being.
Right. And thank you so much, Fred, Pam, Partha, and my sister Baruma, and Shalini, and Shushil. Yeah, Shushil has been very quiet. Yeah.
So for all
yeah,
here.
Thank you so much for being here. And Esperanza is beautiful, and PureEsperanza, is trying to bring that. She's working on that full platform to bring wellness for everyone, so that I really appreciate and acknowledge it. Thankful for that. So have a wonderful.
Thankful for all of us being here. This is all part of this growing awareness and this expanding consciousness, and that's what we're here to do as we're dreaming this world into being right now, and the change that it's going through right now, the evolution for humanity. And so we're thankful for all of you here today. Thank you so much. Peace. Blessings.
Enjoy your eating.
Enjoy. We'll see you next month. Take care.
Pam.